Prime IV Delray Beach helps you feel better, look better, and perform better with IV vitamin therapy. Each of our IV drips is the equivalent of 2.5 gallons of hydration and a custom blended mix of vitamins designed to help you reach your health goals. The top complaints we address are more energy, better sleep, sports recovery, meaning less soreness when you work out, or a great boost to your immune system. Come in if you're feeling under the weather or to help stave off those nasty bugs if someone's in your house and brought them home. Use the code word SWEET, SWEET, for 20% off any IV treatment valid at the Delray Beach location only.
Hello. It's Andrea Trout with Sweet and Spicy. I'm here today with my co-host, Carolina Rush. Hi, Carolina.
Hey.
And we have two beautiful special guests in the studio with us today. We have Sharel. Hi, Sharel.
Hello.
And Sam, our friend Sam. Hi.
Hey.
We finally got you in here.
I know. It's
you resisted.
Oh my gosh,
long
it was
overdue.
like pulling teeth to get you in here.
I love it. I'm a busy lady.
Busy. You are busy. We're all busy. So today we're going to be talking about single parenthood because
The hardest job on the planet.
Literally. I mean, parenting in general is the hardest job, but by yourself, harder, right? Mostly of the time. And we're going to be talking about it from two different angles, which is, I think, super important. And one is being a single mom, because Carolina and Sam have been single moms. And then Sharel, you were raised by a single mom. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of raised by a single mom with stepdads. Like most of my life, they were kind of in and out, and my dad was in and out. So I have some perspective on that as well.
Right.
But Carolina, what do you want to do to kick us off?
So actually, on my way here, I was thinking about the episode and what I wanted to talk about. And I'm actually fascinated by you being here because it made me realize that I'm always, and I think people in general are always talking about how hard it is to be a single parent and what we go through and the challenges we go through. I don't think I've ever stopped to think, what is it like from the other side?
From the kid's side.
Right. Like, what is it like to be a daughter or a son of a single parent?
Yeah.
I mean, my mom and my dad divorced when I was 5. And of course, I felt the effects of that. But within 2 years, I had a stepdad. So I always had a father figure in the home. So I don't consider myself coming from a single mom. So it's just, it's fascinating to think, like, to wonder what you went through, how you, because it might give me insight to see how Isabel might feel. I know some of the challenges that she's been through as far as like wanting a dad in her life and certain things that have happened, which we can get into later. But I never really thought about that side of it. So I would love to hear like how that was for you growing up, maybe compared to other kids that you grew up with.
Yeah. I mean, so I never had, I'm trying to think, like any of the friends I had growing up, they all had 2 parents in the home or were a single parent. And then very quickly, their parents got married and they always had a parent. So for me, it was really hard because I had only known just my mom. I mean, we lived with my grandparents most of my life, but it was always just me and my mom. And so it was really hard seeing, other kids. And even like I have cousins that I'm so close to, they're my best friends. But even seeing that dynamic, like with both parents in the house, I think just seeing like, being able to go to different parents for different things, I never had that experience. And so it was really hard for me to relate to kids. I feel like it was really lonely, honestly, because my dad chose not to be around. And so I feel like that comes with a whole other side of like issues. And, I've worked through a lot of that now, but it was just, the best way I could describe it is probably like a lonely feeling. And like you feel, I did when I was younger, like something missing.
Right.
Yeah.
That was like the biggest thing. Like I always felt like there was a whole part of me that I didn't really know. And a lot of it, my dad's side of the family, like we never really connected until like a couple years ago. And even that is like, we can get into later probably. But it was always communicated. He would talk to my uncle, who would talk to my mom, who would talk to me. Like it was never a direct, like ever since I can remember. So it was hard. It was hard because I felt like I wasn't chosen.
Right.
You know? So yeah, I would definitely say that probably the best way would be like a lonely, you feel like something's missing.
So was he in your life at some point and then left, or you were born and he
No.
wasn't? He
I
was
was
never there.
born, he was there when I was like an infant, which I mean, to me,
Yeah.
that doesn't count.
Right.
But he's from Boston. So I was actually born in Boston. And then he just, had his own demons that he was battling. He also had another kid who, my sister's 10 years older than me. So he kind of already had that dynamic going. And so my mom, which I mean, took a lot of guts for her. Like my grandparents lived in Miami. And so when I was old enough to be on a plane, like we left and I never went back. So he reached out maybe like 5 times from the time I was like little until I was maybe like 15, but I never saw him.
This is so crazy because you are like the spitting image of exactly how it was for my daughter.
Really?
Like everything you just said is exactly how it was for her.
Wow.
So it's so crazy to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like you could get away with more stuff?
I never really tried. It's so funny because everyone in my life, I think there's like a stigma around single moms where it's like, oh, like, their kid's gonna be the craziest one and do all the wild things. And so like everyone around me thought I was wild and thought I was getting away with things, but I wasn't. Like, I mean, I was, young, so I'm sure there was a couple things, but my mom, like, there was always times, like, anytime I kind of thought I got away, randomly she'd be like, oh, like, what happened with so-and-so? You went to so-and-so's house. And I'd be like, oh my God, like, how does she know? She didn't know. Like, I'd ask her, like, years later. She never knew. But I just always, in my head, I'm like, she's going to know. Like, she's going to find out. And I think for me, I had to grow up a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, at 10, I was worried about bills and food and things like that. So I never really, my, like, wild time, like, at that age was probably just, like, being typical teen, like, young, when I was a teenager, like, arguing with your mom. But I never really went super crazy or off the handles because I think for me, I was very much like, I wanted to prove everyone wrong. Everyone thought that, I was going to be this, like, wild person.
Right.
And, like, my mom was older, too, when she had me. She was 33. So, but everyone assumed, like, Sharel's going to sleep around. She's going to do X, Y. I won't say everyone. That's dramatic. But, like, a lot of people in my life, on the outside, no one's super close, but, like, on the outside would, like, come up and say these things to my face.
Well, statistically, that actually is a thing.
Yeah.
That's something that I worry about with Isabel, is they say when you grow up without a father, they tend to be way more promiscuous and involved in like risky behavior in a variety of ways. So that has always stuck in the back of my head. And it just so happens that obviously my daughter's only 14, so she's not promiscuous, but you could definitely see that any man that's been in my life, the minute she gets attention from somebody, she latches on. And she's, she's one boyfriend to the next boyfriend.
She likes
to the next.
boys.
She loves boys.
I went through that, yeah.
And so that's always in the back of my head. And she did say to me recently, she said, I know why I'm like that. She's very self-aware.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't realize
And
that's how
she said, it's because I never had a man, a father figure to love me. And so whenever somebody, a guy, a boy, my boss, whoever it is, shows her a little bit of attention, she said she wants to latch on to that because she wants to know what it feels like to be loved by a male figure.
Yeah. I
And-
relate to that for sure. I went through that
Did
for
you?
a while. Yeah, I would say up until, I'm 28 now. Like I would say the last couple years where the same things kept happening and I'm like, why do I keep going towards the same people? Like in work, not just like romantically, and friends and things like that. And, it was like I knew it in the back of my head, but I didn't want to admit it. So like the fact that she's doing it at 14 is incredible. But
That is amazing.
yeah, it's like there's a lack there. Like there really is. And so the second you get that attention, like that love, whether it's real or not, is, I mean, you don't know what that's like. And so, you know, I think it is hard. Like it can be scary. I think for me, I found myself in situations that ended up being dangerous. And so I then was like, okay, like this is something that I have to like work out and figure out. And like I went to therapy and everything like that. But I mean, yeah, who doesn't? Because as a girl anyway, a teenage girl, you want attention from boys. But
Right.
it's definitely heightened.
It's on a
when
whole nother level.
It's a whole nother thing.
I was boy crazy, but she's on a whole nother level.
Yeah. Because it's things you don't hear from a man ever. Like, I love you. Or, you know, for me, it was someone's choosing to be with me, you know,
Right.
whether it was good for me or not. I felt like I won. I was like, finally, like, it's, you know, it's like that feeling of, you know, the lack of like that love. So I definitely, my mom only had one boyfriend when I was younger. And I was like, this is going to be my dad. And then he ended up being an asshole. So
Gosh, that's what Isabel does every
it's the
time.
worst. And then she never brought anyone around after. I was not the best person to introduce to. I was so mean to anyone else she brought after that.
Really?
Yeah, I was
Interesting.
nasty. Yeah.
Oh gosh,
Because you
that's-
were so like sad about almost like
Yeah.
maybe you thought it or not, but it was like he rejected you as well as her.
Yeah.
Which isn't true.
Right.
But, and you know, the thing is like, I see too, like you're saying like your dad, Isabel's dad, my dad, the thing I see so clearly now, which you don't see when you're younger, is that they are dealing with their own shit.
Yeah.
And they, and like, because I had a lot of the same things. Like I wasn't boy crazy quite like Isabel, but I know that like, it's that perception that you weren't good enough for them to stick around. And it's not true. It had nothing to do with you as the kid. It's just more like they couldn't rise to the occasion of being the dad, you know, of being that parent and adult enough to like handle their own shit and be able to be present for a kid, you know?
Yeah.
And it has nothing to say about the kid.
No,
But
yeah.
but the kids don't get it.
Yeah.
The
Not
kids
at
don't
that age.
understand it. They
You know what's funny is Isabel had a project to do in school, and it was to write a paper on the one person who has been your biggest influence in your life. And when she told me that, of course, I was like,
My
well, I know it's me. And she's like, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but it's not you.
Is it her dad?
It was her dad.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
I did the same.
the letter,
It's
the
crazy.
essay she wrote,
Yeah.
I mean, it caught the teacher's attention. He pulled her aside and he
Yeah.
was like, I've never read a letter like that.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it crushed me. And it was basically saying, you know, you've been the biggest influence in my life because you've taught me who I don't want to be.
Wow.
And it went down that road. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so, of course, I couldn't be like, oh, you should have written it about me. You know, it was,
Yeah.
I had to support that. And it was
Yeah.
amazing. And it was something that she needed to get off of her chest.
Mm-hmm.
But it was weird because you had said you felt incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what she says. She says she feels like she's not whole. Like there's a part of her she doesn't know and a part
Yeah.
of her that's missing. But she does also know she's better off
Yeah.
without that.
Because that's a flip side of it. Like, and I've had this conversation with people. Like, you can have a dad there who's a complete asshole, who's an alcoholic and drunk and dangerous and scary, and or just there and completely unemotionally available. So you wonder why are they even there? So, but you don't have that experience as a kid of like having the dad there, and they're still just you still feel incomplete, right? And it's such an interesting thing. And again, as an adult, like you said, you've been to therapy. I've done a lot of work on this in terms of like figuring out that where you are right now is whole. It doesn't matter whether you had two parents or one parent or no parents. You were adopted, you were, you know, put into foster care. It doesn't matter. You're whole as you are. It's what they work on with alcoholics and drug addicts and people in therapy, because that is what the pain that so many people are trying to kill is I'm not good enough. I'm not whole enough. And the end all be all is we were created exactly whole from the get-go.
Yeah.
But it's the work to figure it out. That's the work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think too, like, all my life, so my dad was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I found that out randomly. Like, my mom and I never spoke about my dad until I was probably like 14. I just never talked about him. And I think I was arguing with a friend or something once. I must have been like 10. And the friend was like, well, at least my dad isn't on drugs. And I was like, I had no idea. I think my friend like overheard a conversation or something like that. And that was the first I ever heard it. And so I went to my mom and I asked her about it. And, you know, like she was really good about not bashing him, even though, I mean, she had every right to. I mean, I did for sure. But, you know, taking the time to be like, you know, this was the life that he was living and I didn't want that for you. Like, I don't even have his last name. Like, and that was on purpose. And so for me, I always struggled with like feeling broken. And I felt like people saw me as broken because of that. And again, like, it took me a long time to realize, like, whether or not I had the best dad ever or he wasn't in my life, that doesn't define me as a person. And, you know, what I went through, like, I don't wish that upon anyone ever, but it made me who I am now. And I'm grateful for that side of it. And, you know, I said, like, I had a sister and she's 10 years older than me and her life is a mess, like, still.
Right.
And she grew up with my dad. And so, I mean, my dad, I always, you know, had that, like, I wanted to one day see him and just, like, tell him off and, like, all this stuff. He ended up passing away in 2015, I think. Just, you know, drugs, now I finally caught up to him. And that was hard because I was so angry.
Right.
And I reconnected with my sister and seeing her life, like, and I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but I was like, oh my God, like, that could have been me.
Yeah.
Right.
And so even that sense, like, it's, you know, it sucks and it's hard, but I think I finally came to the moment where I was like, regardless of him being in my life or not, like, I get to choose the type of person I'm going to be. And I don't have to be broken. I don't have to be, you know, there might be a part of me that's missing or I feel that, but, like, I see it in other ways. Like, it, you know, I think that people come into our lives who kind of show us how we're supposed to be treated and how we're valued. And, you know, it can't come from random boys and stuff like that. I mean, but that took me forever. So I totally relate to her. Like, I totally get that.
Yeah. And I think as she gets older, she'll start to get over that, hopefully, a little bit.
Tired of it.
But the same thing, like, her dad was drug addict, alcoholic, but I was very honest with her. She knows everything. And the main reason why I did that was because I didn't want her to resent me later for why weren't you honest with me, or to think that it was, you know, I kept her from him, you know, for whatever reason. So now she knows. I think she's better off. Yeah. But okay, Sam,
hey,
you're in the hot seat now.
All right, let's go.
So you're coming from a different perspective because you're a single mom like me.
Yes.
So you and I relate a lot more on this subject. So I'm curious to know what you think your biggest challenge has been as a single mom.
I mean, so it's so great to hear your story, Sharel, and everything that you go through, because it really makes me, you know, hear it from a different side and some things that maybe my daughter doesn't tell me. But so I had my daughter when I was quite young. I was 17. I was still in high school. So you know, that in its own is a challenge.
Yeah.
It was with my high school sweetheart, you know.
Happens every day.
I was in love.
Yeah, for sure.
So that in its own, I still was able to graduate on time. I had her before I graduated, and I was able to, thankfully, I had a good support system at the time. And I was able to graduate on time doing summer school and that kind of stuff to catch up. But just having to be responsible for a little human at such a young age, not to mention I had my daughter in the middle of, it was 2004. So I don't know if you remember, but that was the year that we had that string of hurricanes back to back, like Charlie, Jean, Irene, like back to back to back. So I had my daughter in the middle of Hurricane Jean. Literally in the middle. I had to be brought to the hospital in the ambulance because they wouldn't let us drive to the hospital. It was literally in the middle of the hurricane. We had no power. I brought her home. I had her all natural. I brought her home with no power for the first 2 months of her life.
Wow.
We had neighbors that had a generator that ran a fan across the street for her. And just it was really like a village, like really helping us out. You know, I came home with this little baby and there was no power. So we were sanitizing, the nipples for the bottle on the barbecue. It was, and I'm 17 years old.
Did you ever think about naming her after the hurricane?
So I love that you say that. Her middle name is Jean.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So her middle name is Jean. So Carly Jean. She sounds like a little country singer.
She does.
But she has my last name as well. And that's because when I had her, I'll refer to him as my sperm donor. He didn't show up to the hospital. And my dad said, Sam, you can always add a name, but you can never take one off. Mm-hmm. And if he won't show up for this, then you don't know what else he's going to show up for. And you don't want him to have those rights. And it was the best advice anyone has ever given me in my life, or probably will ever give me in my life, because he has not been present at all. And just at that young age, having to, work full time and finish up high school. And my dad, I was still living with my dad, and thankfully he didn't, kick me out. Thanks, Dad. And he helped, when I worked, he would watch her. So thankfully I had that support system there. And I would pay my little brother's cell phone bill to watch her. Mm-hmm. I worked my angles to get a babysitter for work. But it was just really hard to do it all. And at such a young age, I don't really feel like I had much of a childhood, which was my own doing. Right. I did that. But also, my mom had left at quite a young age too. So I kind of had to grow up fast before I even was a young mom. So I just was always in mom mode. So just trying to be present for it all. And, I was in the restaurant biz, so nights and weekends. So I missed a lot of holidays. I missed a lot of milestones and a lot of things that I wish I was more present for, because I had to work 24/7 to be able to pay these bills. So it was a struggle just in it all. And also being so young and still wanting to be a kid, because I did still want to go out and hang out with my friends, and I still wanted to go do things. So I was, the girl with her friends at the mall with the baby. Yeah. Or the party, with the baby. Yeah. And so Carly was the little mascot.
I'm not saying you did this, but it reminds me of the line in the movie, you have a baby in a bar.
Yeah. Yes. Every time.
Sweet Home Alabama.
I always
so love it.
Literally, my daughter, and it's funny that you say that, because my daughter bartending, and I started managing a restaurant at 18 because I just worked I had to work. So my work ethic, I had a baby to feed. And my dad would, she'd come hang out at the bar with the waitresses and the bartenders until my dad could come pick her up after work. So she would sit there and eat the fruit out of the tray. And it was hey, she's the little mascot, even I lived in Savannah for a little while, and I worked at Hooters and she was an honorary little Hooters girl, and they got her a little outfit, so and she cute. Thought it was the coolest thing in the world. She's just always been the little mascot. Yeah. So that's always been fun, but also just missing a lot of stuff. Right. Missing a lot of stuff, and just wishing that maybe.
You mean with her?
With her, milestones, holidays, not in my own life. My life she's the best thing that ever happened. If it wasn't for her, I was a pretty bad teenager. I was pretty bad.
Let's not say bad. Let's say a little wild.
I was bad.
Bad and wild.
Yes. Yes, there was no sweet to my spicy. So I always say, she saved my life. If it wasn't for her, I truly don't know where I would be. Yeah. So really she's my little guardian angel. Yeah.
And that's so, again, kind of growing up without a dad, or, where you think that's a problem, it turns out often to be the blessing.
It really does.
Because I'm sure it was a shock to figure out at 16 or 17 that you're pregnant. It's a shock, right? Yeah. And you're like, holy shit, what am I going to do?
My life was over.
Yeah. Everything just changed. No matter what you do with it, everything just changed. But in the end, it often becomes a blessing. And I've seen it in other friends, that had a baby in high school, and their kids had kids young, and they're our age, and they're a grandma,
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, I have friends that are having babies at 50, So it's an interesting end of the spectrum with kids for sure. But both sides are it was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was. And I wouldn't change a thing. Even my mistakes I made with her, that's one thing that's really great about we're so close in age because we kind of grew up together.
Yeah.
And we still kind of are because I'm still very much a child. But
You don't give yourself enough credit.
but we grew up together. So I just always was very open and honest with her about everything. And when I messed up, I would own it. It wasn't that, with at least some experience with my parents, like they mess up and go off on you and there's no ownership of approaching it the wrong way or, I'm the parent and this is what it is. Mm-hmm. Where with her, if I lost my temper or something, I would say, you know what, that's unacceptable. I'm not allowed to raise my voice at you. And I took a lot of ownership. And,
awesome.
And I just always tried to relate to her. And maybe because there was such a small age difference that I could relate on that level and just things with school and peer pressure and all these things, I just could relate a little bit more too. And I just was like, why are you stressing, girl? It's all good. So I just always try to create that safe space because I didn't really have that either. Mm-hmm. So just always creating that space for her to come to me. And it's funny because she's like a lot like you as a kid. She was the best kid.
I know. I thought that too. I was like, it's so interesting how we say kids of single parents are the wild kids. And I'm like, here you have one that isn't, yours isn't.
No.
Izzy's not a wild kid. Yes, she likes boys, but she's not a wild child.
She's a good girl.
She is.
She's a good girl.
100%.
My daughter asked permission to do senior skip day.
Yeah. And you're like, she says she's going to the library. She actually means it.
I know. No, she does. Her and her best friend, for their hangout days, they go to Barnes & Noble and buy a new book and go to Starbucks. So and
cute.
They're the cutest things. And I always joke and I'm like, nerd.
Such a good thing.
I know it's such a good thing. And she's just such a good person. And not just like a good girl, like she behaves, but she genuinely cares.
Yeah.
And she knows the struggle because she grew up with such a young mom. So growing up, I didn't have the most expensive thing. I couldn't buy her all these fancy toys and things like that. And so even as she got older, she never really wanted like those cool sneakers or that backpack. She was always so conscious of money and budget and struggle. And even to this day, she's off at college now and she's like, hey, Mom, I need some new shoes. And I'm like, just go buy them. You have the car,
Yeah.
It's just stuff like that she's so conscious of. And it's just so sweet and good. But also sometimes I feel a little guilty because I feel like she worries too much. And I feel like that's because she had a young mom. So she watched me go through a lot, growing up, abusive relationships, me going through my own stuff, trying to get my stuff together. So she saw a lot and she was exposed to a lot. And so she worries. And so I feel a lot of guilt that she worries as much as she does. I wish that she didn't worry.
Have you talked to her about it?
Oh, we talk all the time about it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we talk all the time about it. And I always like talk her through it and like put her in my, I'm good, girl.
Yeah.
Like, especially now that she's at college, I talk to her all day, every day. We text constantly. I have her location constantly on my phone. I stalk her. Yeah. I have a Ring camera that I have access to. So
such a different world than we grew up in.
I know. But she, in the flip side, checks on me just as much. And it's so cute. She'll text me and be like, good morning, Mom. Have a great day at work. Aww. How's work going? And she's just a good girl. And she really is like my little built-in bestie in the best way. And yeah, it's
like she has an old soul.
Yeah. She does.
Yeah.
She does. Her favorite band is like Queen. And she doesn't listen to any
young music.
Yeah.
Popular music now.
No, she doesn't. I think like popular music to her is like Green Day.
I like it.
I know. I'm here
she
for
has
it.
Good
She's
taste.
cool. No, she's a cool kid. Like I say all the time, I want to be so much like you.
Aww.
And it's funny because on that flip side, when we were first talking about like her going to college and her career and all that stuff, we were talking about it and I told her, I don't want you, it just was 4 years ago that I really got into like the marketing world. Before that, I bartended and waitressed and managed restaurants my entire life. So before that, when we were talking about college, I had told her, I want you to go to college. I needed to make money fast and, I got, it's easy, quick money and it's great money, but I want you to go to college. I don't want you to have the same path that I did. I don't want you to have the same route I did. And she said, Mom, no offense, but I don't want to be like you.
My daughter tells me the same
Yeah.
thing all the time.
And
I'm not you. I don't want to be like you were.
Yeah, she said straight. She said, "No offense, Mom, but I don't want to be like you." And I could not be more happy.
Right.
Like I was like, "Thank God." I want, you always want better for your kids. So her saying she didn't want to be like me, I was like, "Thank God." Like, let's go. So,
So do you ever find yourself, and you might be able to talk about this too, like one thing, a couple of things that I've struggled with, and I think Carly and Isabel are very, very different. And I know that everybody knows Isabel, loves her. She's a sweetheart, all of that. But there is a side to Isabel that is a typical sassy teenager, master manipulator that people don't see.
Oh, I see it.
That
Trust
I deal
me.
with. So
I'm the other parent sometimes,
Yeah.
and she tries to play me against you. I know, Isabella.
Oh, yeah.
We got your number.
when I don't let her do something, she calls Andrea.
Yeah.
And she tells Andrea to talk to me about it.
Yes.
That's what she started doing.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Right.
And
She
it
got
makes
the
me
number.
even more mad.
And we know. We have a conversation. I'm like, I know exactly what she's trying to do. I'm here to
Yeah.
tell you.
Like, we're not
we
gonna
know.
talk about
yeah.
it.
But one of the things that I have always struggled with as a single parent is I parent out of guilt. So I always feel I have spoiled her to death because I have always felt I need to make up for the missing half. And it's also very difficult to play good cop, bad cop.
yeah.
And do you feel, as the daughter of a single mom, that your mom ever parented out of guilt?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I did live with my grandparents and my Puerto Rican grandma. So like I wasn't getting away with anything.
Yeah.
But I think when I was older, like definitely in my teenage years, I think my mom definitely parented out of guilt. Like we've talked about it, where she just like felt bad. And so, she'd let me, go and hang out and there was like a specific group of people I used to always hang out with, and I'd be out till like 3 a.m. And she'd be like, "Oh, but it's those people, so she's good and safe."
Right.
So I definitely think there were a lot of times that she for sure parented out of guilt. Even like me going to the school I went to, I didn't want to go to, was to follow, to go with people that I knew, which is one of my biggest regrets. But my mom didn't want me to go. And I that was probably like the one like super guilt, like how could you not let me, and blah, blah, blah. And that's the one thing we still talk about, where she's like, I feel like I shouldn't have, I should have put my foot down, and I just, you wanted to go so bad. And I mean, I was 17.
Right.
I didn't know anything.
So this was for college?
Yeah.
Oh, and you wanted to go and she didn't want you to go.
Yeah.
And she ended
like,
up giving in.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
I
So like
see.
I would say I experienced it more in my teenage years for sure, where my mom was like, because I mean, my mom had to work too. So, and I was homeschooled from 8th grade through high school, which I loved. Like,
With
I
your
did so
grandparents?
No. So I did a lot of co-ops. And
Oh, okay.
then my mom's brother, those kids were also
Oh, your
homeschooled. So
cousins, yeah.
I would go to all my co-ops and stuff. My aunt would take me and stuff like that. So my mom didn't, really know where it was a lot of the time.
Right.
And so I kind of, I think when I was a teenager is when she kind of had that, like, because, you want to go out more, you want to do more things,
Right.
all your friends are doing it. And so I can't believe I just said that.
And so
but-
that's like the weird part, because you were a good kid.
Mhm.
So I am I am like the mom that wants to put her in a bubble, and I'm probably a little too strict, but it's because of all the things I did,
Mhm.
because I was a horrible, horrible child. And I did everything under the sun you could possibly think of that I should not have done. And so I always am afraid she's going to do exactly what I did. And so I'm always trying to be like one step ahead, like, "Oh, Mom, can I go to the movies?" And I'm like, "Really?" I was like, "You're going with Parker? How many boys are going to be there?" And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, "I'm not dumb. I'm like, I know what the movies are. Are you going to sit in the back row too?" Like, that's just how I am.
Yeah.
And I instill this fear in her, because I was like, "You're never going to be able to get away with anything, because I did it all, and I'm going to know all the signs, and I'm going to catch you when you do it," or whatever. And so, but still, I do give in a lot. I have very rarely said no to my daughter. Yes, because she's a really good kid, but I also can't be naive. She's
Yeah.
also a teenager.
She is.
With raging hormones, and she's beautiful. And, that's a very difficult part for me. Do you feel like Carly's like a saint from what I know? So do you feel like you've ever had to parent out of guilt?
More guilt and like, I want to say like maybe Christmas time I'll overspend because I want to get like that really good gift. But like getting away with stuff, like I encouraged her to get in trouble. Before she turned 18, I was like, girl, you got 3 months left. Go get arrested.
Oh my gosh.
Go do it now.
She's like, it's on me.
Yeah, before it's on you. Go get it out of your system. You got 3 months until, it's all on you. So I'm kind of more the side that I'm like, live a little, like,
Wow.
go out, make friends, have fun.
Can I just tell you, I am so the opposite of that. Like, I will tell my daughter, we talk about like, because they have social media. We didn't have that when I was growing up. So I tell her, if you post one picture of some nude boobs, whatever, on a phone, and you send it to somebody, it's going to end up on the internet. You're not going to go to college. You're going to work at McDonald's for the rest of your life. I like go all
over the top.
like that.
over the top.
Yeah.
Because you just.
I'm pretty
it's
sure Kim
different.
Kardashian has a sex tape out there. She's doing all right.
Yeah, that's a little different.
I mean,
employers are now looking at your social media. They did not do that.
I've
back
known
then.
people who got fired.
Exactly.
I don't disagree, but there's ways around it. You don't put your full name on your social. Like, you wouldn't put your name as, like, Andrea Trout. If I wanted to hide from an employer, I would put it as something different. And all your friends know you. They're already friends. So then you just tell people, oh, my Instagram's this, or my name is this. It's like Instagram. It's not usually your name. You have to tell them. So you just put that on Facebook. Because trust me, I am an employer. I go look at Facebook. It makes a difference. I am 100% aware that's true. Change your name. They can't find you.
My mom was like that too. Like, she, more than guilt, it was like parenting out of fear because she experienced a lot growing up. And so, honestly, I was terrified to go like, and I also, the area we lived when I was young, I lived in North Miami, and like, not the nice beach side, the other side of North Miami.
Yeah. Right.
So like, I couldn't even play in my backyard by myself.
Right.
And so, I mean, my mom was always very open about, that's one thing I really, really did appreciate of everything she went through, and like, she also did. And like, she was never like, you're not allowed because X, Y, and Z. It was just like, this is my experience, and I never want to feel like that again. I never want to do that again. And so for me, I was like, well, I don't want to feel like that. And again, did I make mistakes? For sure. Like, you're a teenager, even in my young 20s. And I think you can only control so much. And it's like that. And I know my mom struggled with this too. Like, there are going to be times where it's like, you say yes and you're the bad guy because something happens, or you say no and you're the bad guy. And I think, like, at the end of the day, we're going to make mistakes. Like, she's going to make mistakes. And, she might end up in situations that she's like, oh, crap. Like, and for me, I was like, I never want that to happen again. Right. I'm never doing that again. And I think some of it you do have to kind of just go through and.
Yeah.
Well, it could backfire on you because, I mean, I have been very open with Isabel about everything that I've done. And so now it's like when I tell her she can't do something, well, you did it. So it's like, well, shit, should I not have told you? But, times are different now, and it is what it is. But another thing that I've struggled with is, I made a note about this, is that she is, I mean, you didn't manipulate your mom, it sounds like.
I did a little bit. Not more when I was little. Like, I was very good at, like, getting out of things. That's how I manipulated.
Yeah, Isabella's too.
Like, as a kid, like, for example, I think I was, like, 8. I think I cursed out my cousin. I was pissed about something. And my mom was like, I'm going to wash your mouth out with soap. Like, this is, I mean, back in the day.
Right.
So whatever.
Or the
don't
belt.
freak out. So, but in my head, I'm like, if I tell her I taste good, I'll never do it again. And it's exactly what I did. And she never like, so things like that. Like I was very like, calculative. Like I was like, I could talk my way out of certain
exactly
things.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like crazy. Like I wasn't going to like house parties and being like, oh, I'm sleeping over so-and-so. Like that, I never really, I think I went to one party.
Right.
And I regretted it. But I think that was the one time where I was like, oh, I'm sleeping, which was true. I ended up sleeping over my friend's house after. But I was very good at talking myself out of things. Like that's how you know, it wasn't a lot because I was just always, I grew up never wanting to rock the boat. So I think that's maybe where me and Izzy differ is like, I just wanted to be good and I didn't want to bring any stress. Like I just kept quiet and, you know, did what I needed to do and that was really it. So I was like a little bit more reserved in that way.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I think you might be able, maybe you can't relate. I don't know, maybe you can. But one thing is about anytime that, as a single parent, I think one of the biggest challenges I've gone through is not having somebody to back me up or bounce ideas off of or say, go ask your dad, or everything is me. I am the decision maker on everything. And I can tell you that 9 out of 10 times, whenever something has happened, like something serious, and I've reacted, I've always questioned myself afterwards because I could be very impulsive in my reactions, believe it or not. And I will literally go to bed and I will Google, what do you do when a 14-year-old girl does X, Y, Z?
Don't do that.
And let me tell you that every single time it says, do not do exactly what I just did. And I'm like, this is the hardest part. Like I'm thinking that I'm reprimanding or punishing or reacting the way that I should because that is how my parents would have reacted. And for example, my daughter came home with a hickey. Right? See, she's not the sweetheart you see, the innocent sweetheart. And this was what, like a year ago?
Yeah. She was 13.
She was 13 and no clue.
Probably
She
about
comes
to, well,
home-
maybe it was right after she turned 14. I don't know.
No. She just turned 14 2 months ago.
Oh, yes. Then it was right after she turned 13.
Right. So she went to the movies, of course. The
Movies.
Sat in the back row.
Back row.
And she came home like nothing. And she's talking to me and I'm like,
Oh my
come
She
over
didn't
here.
realize it was there.
I would have hit
And she was
that
like, what?
so
And I was like, what the
quick.
fuck? What the fuck is that? She's like, what are you talking about? I was like, let me see your neck. And she's like, what? And she like had no clue.
She probably didn't even know
She
how
didn't
it
know what it was.
happened.
She didn't know how it
hickey could
happened. She was clueless. And I was like,
Well,
how
she
do
learned.
you not know what is going
hard way.
on? Like, do you not feel a leech on your neck?
Like she actually didn't know.
And
I
she
thought she was
didn't
like, oh.
know whatever he was doing
Yeah.
was causing that. And
Right.
so
Oh my gosh.
oh my gosh,
But see, that's actually great that she didn't know.
I know that, but I'm, like I said, I'm very impulsive. So I'm not going to lie. I flipped the fuck out.
I don't
Like,
blame you.
flipped out.
I would.
Yeah,
I
I don't
would.
blame you.
I mean,
My
what
mom-
are you supposed to say? High five?
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean,
Well,
like,
then
was
you know
it good?
what? I flipped out so bad on her that I actually felt horrible afterwards. So I go in my room. I'm not speaking to her. I'm like, you're grounded for the rest of your life. And I start Googling. And every single answer was laugh it off. Tease them about it. It's not a big deal. If you make it a big deal, they're never going to tell you anything again. Blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? And then I end up apologizing to her.
See, I don't know about that one. I would freak out too. I think it depends.
And I get what it says that, you know, because you want to keep that communication open.
Right.
But at the same time, like, not to a fault.
Yeah.
Because you're still the parent at the end of the day. And I think some of this extra, and I never spanked Carly. I never did any of that. But I think that there's such thing as too much gentle parenting.
I 100%
like,
agree.
I'm not your friend. I'm your mom at the end of the day. You're my best friend, but I'm your mom first. And she shouldn't be getting hickeys and coming home after the movies. Like, you know, that, and I'm sure, you know I was doing it at her age, you know, and maybe you were, I don't know, but
I totally was.
Yeah. So it's scary, and you're gonna react, and they know you're gonna react. And so, yeah, you did feel bad afterwards, and you did apologize, and that does suck, but it doesn't take back the punishment. You know, it's just kind of more having accountability for the reaction that you had, which is important, because we can't let books also teach us how to parent, because not every single kid is exactly the same. And some kids need like more strong parenting. Some kids need more strict parenting, to where some kids need the friend, the buddy, because they're too sensitive. And it's just different ways to go around it. So there's not one right way or wrong way. And you know what? We're all going to lose our shit and, you know, go off on our kids. We're around them all the time. They can get really annoying. And even if they're an angel, they can get really annoying. And we're going to have moments to where we're just like, what are you thinking? You know? And to react that way, I think it's totally normal. And and honestly, I guarantee that she wasn't destroyed over your reaction. I guarantee she went in her room and was like, oh, crap, I'm in trouble. But she just made out with a boy all night, so her day wasn't that bad.
She was fine. No,
and this is coming from, I mean, I lost my virginity at 14.
Yeah, I mean, I had my daughter at 17.
Yeah. So, you know, when you think about that, here I am, like, crucifying her for the hickey, but still, it's too young.
Okay, I'm going to throw this out there. So I have a friend in Colorado. She has 3 daughters. And she's a very, we'll say, she has a very different parenting style. And she's divorced. So the kids still had a dad, but they were divorced and they didn't live together, obviously. And they would have discussions at dinner with her. And I don't remember how young the youngest was, probably 14-ish. But and the other girls were in their teenagers. And one of them was mad because she hadn't had an orgasm yet. And they would have the conversations with the mom.
How old?
I'm pretty sure the youngest was 14, and they had very open discussions about sex and about, well, are you sure you want to do that? And what was very clear was if you get pregnant, that you are responsible. If you're having sex, you're responsible for it. And if you get pregnant, I will take you to the bus with your baby, but you're not living with me. You're going to be relying on your dad if he'll do it. But her kids had a very, I will say from observation far away, had a very healthy, viewpoint of sex. Like, it was way more healthy than a lot of people do.
There's a dad in the picture. Totally different.
And again, I don't know how often they had, what relationship they had with him. It seemed like he was pretty present.
And when
was
this?
This was 10, 15 years ago.
And again, abortion was legal at the time.
Yeah.
So things are different now.
Well, and social media wasn't as bad as it was. And not saying that, it's good to have that open.
Now,
I think sometimes when, growing up, my parents made sex like this devil.
Right.
You know, and my sister wanted birth control, and my parents forced me to go on birth control because my older sister was having sex and wanted birth control. So obviously Sam's having, and they forced it on me. Well, I guess it didn't work that good. But it was kind of almost like, and before I had been put on birth control, I had no desire.
So
I wasn't.
Perfect thing you brought up.
And it was kind of like, I thought I could get away with it. And so
did it give you the okay to have sex?
Yes, absolutely.
That is my biggest fear with Isabel. Everyone's like, put her on birth control the minute she goes into 9th grade. And I'm like, that's kind of like saying, go ahead, have sex.
Yeah.
But then they're like, well, think about the repercussions if she's not on birth control and she has sex. What then? It's going to be a lot worse.
I mean,
Can I tap in for a second?
of course.
So when I was in high school, I got on birth control, not because I was having sex, but I got on birth control to regulate my hormones because I had such bad hormones. I wasn't sexually active until I was well into my late teens anyway, but I had bad acne, I had hormonal issues, and it wasn't for me to have sex. I was raised by my dad. I mean, my mom had been deceased, and my dad knew I wasn't sexually active. It was a different kind of conversation. I don't know. That was the thing.
But I think now, and I think Andrea might be able to talk about this, back then we didn't know as much about birth control as we do now. And I would say birth control has worse effects on your body, especially at that age,
100%.
than we knew back then.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So now, yes, you're talking about your parents put you on it to regulate your hormones, and now birth control could cause 20 times more problems that we know about because we're more educated now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Correct?
Yeah. Yes. It's related to infertility. A lot of women have infertility in their 30s because they've been on birth control for 20 years. And your body thinks it's been pregnant because it's a hormonal balancing of the body the way I understand it. And there might be ones out there that don't do this now. I don't know all the ins and outs of what's available, but your body believes it's pregnant. So it thinks it's been pregnant for the last 20 years, and you get off it, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't need to be pregnant anymore. So and there's other parts of it, right? Like you've released 90%, I believe is the statistic, of your eggs by the time you're 30. So like that's why in your late 30s, you're a high risk pregnancy because you're geriatric at that point, right? So it's why they were talking about freezing eggs and all that for younger women, because really, our biology is to have babies in our teens and 20s. That's the biology of how humans have evolved. And now we're living a lot longer, and women are working and educated and stuff, so we're having babies later. So that's what's at odds, right? 100% though, it affects your endocrine system. It is, from my perspective, not a great thing to be on for most of your life. Obviously, there's other factors at play of not wanting to have a baby, and it is a woman's choice to be able to do that or not. And there's other ones like you can do an IUD, also has different risk factors, right? What's the one, the copper one? I just blanked on it. It's like a T that goes in the cervix.
I do the Mirena, and I haven't had my period in like 12 years. I'm
blanking. Maybe I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, there's the one that goes in and it's good for like 5 years, but there's risks. Like they may have to surgically remove it down the road if there's complications. Like there's risks with all of it. So you just have to I've never been on birth control in my life. And I'm grateful for it because I know that it's actually benefited me for that, right? And I didn't have, a lot of people have had like endometriosis and the bad periods and the acne that they do use it for that regulation. And it wasn't your parents putting it on, it was the doctors. Let's be clear. Yeah. It was the doctors because this is what has been an acceptable standard for a long time.
Right.
And I think the open conversation with your kids is the best thing you could do because the thing that I see more than anything is they will trust you because you're willing to have that open conversation. And I agree with you. I think sometimes we can see it. We've all seen it of the parents want to be the friend too much versus the parent.
Yeah.
And it does get too much. And I don't think my friend in Colorado was that. She was definitely the mom. There was no doubt she was the mom. But she just had a very different viewpoint of healthy sexuality. And she's like, your hormones are raging. Like, this is when a lot of humans have sex. Like, let's not hide it. If you're going to do it, let's talk about all the consequences and what I'm willing to do as a parent, how to help and how to not help. Like, your dad helped. He was willing. She wasn't. And she told him that before it was ever an issue. So again, I'm not saying that's the right way. I just was like you guys. I was shocked when we were having this conversation. I'm like, you what? You talk about with your kids about sex at the dinner table? Like, it's not the norm.
It's fine.
I don't
to talk
think
about
that the sex. I think talking about orgasm.
Yeah, that
was shocking because that's like. I mean, I feel like that's like. Of course, they're gonna want to go have sex if they know that that's like their. What the gold at the end of the rainbow or whatever. But I think maybe, and it's good to be open and honest because with my parents, they made it such a taboo, evil. I was raised very strict Catholic, and so it was just not on the table. You get married, this is just the route you take in life. And so it just was such a bad, evil thing and we didn't talk about it. It was, whatever. And so it was just one of those things. It's almost something that you want because it's like, forbidden fruit.
I mean, as the kid, I didn't go on birth control until I was in college. And that's because I was like sick and stuff like that. And they were like, this is the only thing that's going to cure you. And I was on it for a year and I was like, this is the worst. I was sicker when I was on it. So whatever. But as the kid, I think a little bit more old fashioned than people my age where I'm like, at the end of the day, like my mom is my mom. So like, obviously I'm not gonna, I was gonna be pissed at her being like, no, like, I'm not your friend. But she also was.
Yeah.
Right.
But there
Yeah.
was that, like, no, I am gonna get in trouble if I do certain things. But even with, because I also grew up like in the church and everything like that, and I am grateful, very, very grateful for it. But that's something you don't talk about.
Yeah.
But my mom was always open and on. Like, I knew it was, my mom never sat me down, because I always hear this where it's like, you sit your kid down, you have the sex talk. My mom never was like, okay, this is what it is.
Yeah.
She always had that open conversation. If you have questions, you can ask me. And it was always just very like, I feel like usually when you talk to kids, it's like, you can't do it just cause. And
Right.
just no. And I think I always had the open conversation with my mom of like, okay, well, why? And like, why X, Y, and Z. And it's uncomfortable. Like, what 15-year-old wants to talk to their mom about sex? Like, it's so uncomfortable.
Even as adults, we don't want to talk to our parents.
Even me
about
talking about it
sex.
now, I'm like, mom's gonna watch
Yeah.
this. I'm like,
I know.
Sorry,
Have you
Mom.
ever watched a movie with your parent and like a sex scene
Oh
comes
my gosh,
on?
it is
It's
awful.
the worst thing
It's
in
awful.
the world.
I went
You
to
just
the
wanna
movies.
leave. I go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
took
I gotta
my
go.
mom.
I gotta go. I can't
So
watch
funny.
this with you.
I took my mom to see
Yeah.
Girls Trip with like Queen. I was like, this is gonna be so funny. It's like 80% sex, and I'm sitting. I think I was like 19 at the time, and I'm like, oh my God, like I was so uncomfortable.
worst.
We're in the theater, so I'm just like sitting like this, and I'm like, she's gonna talk about this after, like what I'm gonna do. But I think
And then you just didn't talk about it.
no, we did. My mom
Okay.
was like, "Wow, so this is what you want to watch?" And we kind of joked
wow.
about it. Like it was. I was like,
good.
"Mom, I swear, like whatever." But I think like at the end of the day, like you can only control so much, and I think having an open like orgasm is crazy, like at the dinner table. But I mean, if that worked for them, cool. And I think at the end of the day, like it's a lot of like even with my mom, like you're learning your kid as you're learning yourself in that stage of life, and so
Right.
I think it's a lot of trial and error. Like there were times like, my mom and I would have certain conversations where, okay, this didn't work. Let's, if something happens again, circle back and we go around. And I think I appreciate it now, even if at the time I didn't. I think like, it's kind of, in retrospect, like now I'm like, wow, I look back at it and I'm like, no, I think, and at the end of the day, like she did the best she could.
Right.
And so it's not always going to be perfect. And I think that, whether you have two parents or not, that's a thing. And it's definitely heightened when there's only one.
Yeah.
Right. Of course.
Do you have that same perspective of he did the best he could about your dad?
He did?
Mm-hmm.
No.
See, because I do. Because he did the best he could. That's why he used drugs and alcohol, because he couldn't cope. He did the best he could, but that was
Yeah.
all he could
but
ever
you
do.
have your dad still in your life.
I've been taking care of my dad, but my
Right.
dad was in and out and like never took care of us.
But you've grown to have compassion for him because he's been around. Like he was
I
not even existent.
understand. My dad almost didn't exist. He was more in my life than your
Yeah.
dad for sure. Like he lived at my grandma's, and my grandma was one of my favorite people, so I would go there. But it wasn't like he was reaching out to see us for the most part. Like a couple times when we were younger, but we chose to take care of him not because he was in our lives, because he had taken care of us. It was more a matter of like a little bit of that missing piece. Like I need to take care of him because you weren't there, because he wasn't there, and it was in the retrospect the best decision, even though it's been incredibly challenging and hard.
Sure.
But and even like our family says, like he would be dead if it weren't for my sister and I. It's 100% true. He would be dead.
I will say on that, because like I'm past a lot of the hurt. I think now, like I'm not seeking that in men. Like I'm not like I'm good, But there was a time, one of my biggest regrets in life, I think, and now I've come to terms with it, but he had reached out, I think through my mom. I think I was like 16. And my mom was like, he wants to talk to you. Like, do you want to go see him? And I was like, no, screw him. Like,
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, which was my dream for so long. And then I think like a couple months later, I was like, oh, actually, I changed my mind. And this was actually the biggest issue. And my mom said it was fine if I talked about it because I know she's going to listen. But our biggest like issue, and like we're good now. My mom's like, I talk to my mom every single day. My mom's like one of my best friends. But months later, I was like, yeah, I'm good. And she's like, oh, I can't get a hold of him. And so I graduated high school. He missed that. And so I thought, like, I missed my opportunity. And then I was like, oh, well, when I go to college, maybe I'll try to reach out. And then I don't know what it was, but I just, like, felt like he was gone. Gone. And I remember I asked my mom about it, and she was like, I don't know. Like, I'll try to find out. So I think I was, like, 18 at this point. And I ended up finding out. I think I texted my mom. And it's so terrible. I feel so bad. But I texted my mom and I was like, I know you know what happened to him. If you don't tell me right now, I'm never speaking to you again. And she called me and she was like, like he died. And I thought it just happened. And I found out so he reached out maybe like January of however long ago. And then I graduated high school in May of that same year in 2013. And he reached out because he was dying. Basically, like he finally whatever, all his demons caught up with him. And so I was like, no, I'm good. And then I never got that chance. And then I didn't find out until like 2 years later. And I didn't talk to my mom. I mean, I was away at school too, so it kind of like helped. I didn't talk to my mom for 6 months maybe. And that's when she opened up to me about a lot of things like she went through and dealt with. So at the time, like, when I talk about it, I don't think he did the best he could when I was little because he wasn't always like that. Like, there are times where, like, he was an athlete. He was good and fine and was in his daughter's life, healthy and great, and then he wasn't. So it was, like, there was a lot of back and forth. But I do have compassion. I do still struggle with, like, did you do the best you could? Like, come on, dude.
Right.
But I have compassion because I know that, like, that's, he had, again, like, his demons. And I think, like, if I could go back, I wish that I could have had that opportunity.
Hindsight's a bitch.
Yeah.
Right? It's such a bitch.
It's the worst.
It really is.
But, yeah, I think, I don't know, obviously, like, with my mom did the harder thing, in my opinion.
But he's the one that missed out.
He's the one that missed out.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, I say, like, I don't think he did the best he could because even if, my mom wasn't perfect, she had her own stuff she was going through and, but she chose, to do the hard thing. And I'm so grateful for that,
For sure.
So I think, and especially now, like, I'm in my 20s and, I see now that I'm an adult, like, it's tough. Like, it is tough in these streets. And so I can't imagine doing that with a kid. Like, I have such respect for, like, both of you. And, like, even you taking care of your dad, like, that's a lot. It's hard. And I think at the end of the day, like, it's never going to be perfect. And you're going to freak out and you're going to scream and all that stuff. And it happens. Like, shit happens. And
So, quick question, because I know we're
long.
we're long. We're almost out of time.
Yes.
But I have one last question for you. So, and of course, forget that Carly is amazing and you would not change having her.
She could be a little shit.
But if you could go back, would you do it again or would you do something different?
I think I would do it all the same. I think I would do it all the same. And of course, there's so many opportunities to say, I wish I could have done better. I wish I could have done this better. But every single thing is...
But would you have even waited?
No, I wouldn't have waited because, like I said, where I was going, the road I was going down, the path I was going down at that time in my life, God brought her, and not to get, like, religious, but, like, God brought her into my life at that specific time for a specific reason. I mean, she was born in the middle of a hurricane. I mean, if that's not a sign.
And she's pretty calm.
And she's, like, the chillest baby ever. She was sleeping through the night at 3 months old.
Wow.
Like, she's always been just a chill little cucumber. But I wouldn't have done it any differently. And now, as crazy as it is, now she's off at college. And I've always bragged like, oh, when she goes off to college, I'll be 35, I'll be 36. Like, I get 2 lives. So I get to the mom part, but then I get to go live my life while I'm still young as well. And it's so funny that I've looked forward to that for so long, because now that she's off at college, I'm absolutely miserable.
Yeah. It's like, it was
and I
hard
just
for
want to
you.
sit at home sad because I miss my best friend. But still, I'm like getting better. And now it's like an opportunity to travel. And all my best friends are just now, like, they have like 1-year-olds, or, you know, I just got back from my twin nephews turned 4. And so now I get to go and be present for them as well, you know, because they were present for my daughter's life. And so now I get to go be present for their kids' lives. And I come into town and I'm just fun Uncle Sammy.
I say Uncle Sammy.
Uncle Sammy. They all call me Uncle Sammy. So now I come into town and I just get to have fun and come and go and leave like a hurricane. And, you know, it's very odd just being able to go. I went to the airport to go to North Carolina, and, you know, my dogs, I don't have dogs anymore. And, you know, my daughter's off at college, and leaving my house, not having to worry about one thing, was the most stressful experience of my life.
Wow.
I turned off the water to the entire house. I unplugged literally everything. Like, I used to, and it's funny because last year Carly was 18 and I went to California for a few days and she was home alone, and I felt so comfortable. Everything's under control. I have cameras, everything's good. But leaving my house completely, it was so stressful not checking in on things.
Right.
Interesting.
It's
It's funny.
So weird.
I don't have that at all. I'm like, bye house.
It's like, I'm going to
See
come
you
back
when I see
nothing.
So I feel like we could have talked about this for like 3 more
I know,
hours.
I
So we might have to
know.
have a part 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to wrap up, but real short, because we're long on time. We always ask people, what was your best or worst date? We prefer worst because they're typically better stories.
Oh, I have so many worst dates. Do you want to go first?
No, I have to think.
I'm trying to think which one I want to tell.
And if you can think of a best one, if that's easier, go for it. It's okay.
Hold on a second.
You got to have a good bad one. I know you do.
Let's keep it rolling.
I don't really date. That's the thing. Like, I'm a relationship girl. So it's like, but I will, so I have one, I'll say, but God, I ended up dating him forever. He was a total loser. And I should have known this off the first date. So he was supposed to meet me at a bar. And we were going to go from there to go to the date, because I didn't, to like go out to dinner. Like, we're going to have a drink and then walk somewhere to go out to dinner. So he just like no-showed, like out of nowhere, like no-showed, but it was a bar where I knew, like, I had friends that worked there because I was in the bar industry. So I just ended up, we had a band that was playing somewhere else. So we were like, you know what? He's not showing up. Let's just go out. So then he shows up. I don't know how. He must have showed up at the bar and like someone told him where we went. He showed up to the bar like hammered.
Oh my God.
And so I guess that was our date. So
Wow.
And you
yeah.
dated him after for a while?
Yeah. For like a long time.
Nothing
How
like
old were
first
you?
impressions.
We lived
right?
together.
Wow.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was really
Nice.
bad. I was 21.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was like maybe
With a
21,
baby.
22. I was
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of confidence. I didn't have much self-worth going on. So, yeah. Lucky for him. So,
See, it's good. It's good to be older.
yeah, it is.
We might have to get yours on the
I
next
was going to
round.
say, I have a quickie, but I can do it the next time.
Go quick.
Go
Quick?
quick.
Okay.
Go quick.
I was like the same age. We went to the movies, and he told me everything that happened right before, to the point that I had to turn around and be like, hey, can you stop? Like, I actually want to watch the movie. Within that same thing during the movie, told me the first time we went out that I was his wife and he was going to marry me. And I was like, that's definitely not happening. He picked me up, which don't ever do that. And we're driving back. His car breaks down. And so we're stuck in the middle of nowhere for 3 hours. Fixes his car. His mom calls him on the way there on speaker, asking him how it's going. He's like, it's going so great. Like, we're having so much fun. His mom was pissed that we were having fun because I lived like 40 minutes away. And super weird. And he's telling her, yeah, like, I think I found my wife on the phone with his mom. I'm sitting right there.
Gosh.
And I'm already like, I'm never going to see this man again. And he, while we're still stuck, is like, so are we going to go out again? And I was like, I'll let you know. Like,
God.
Can you
would've
ask
said
me when I'm
anything
out?
you wanted to hear at the
I would have
moment.
just said
Yeah.
yes, so I didn't
Yeah.
get
Literally,
murdered
I was
and
like,
left
oh,
for dead.
sure, for sure. He dropped me off, and then the next day I was like, yeah, this will never ever happen.
Yeah,
again.
no.
Wow.
Like the
the
kids say
worst.
no. Yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
Well, ladies, thank you so much. Like Carolina said, we could have gone on for a while.
Yeah.
There's a lot. But
I don't even think we scratched the surface.
it was really good. Thank you.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
for
Yes.
having
Love you, girls.
Love
Love
you.
you.
So fun.
And be sure to
Stay tuned.